Welcome to the Sens Spotlight podcast brought to you by the Sick Podcast Network. Before we get started, bet the beauties with Betway and scan the QR code on the screen or click on the link in the details section to create an account and download the app. Must be 19 plus. Please play responsibly. Betway is an official sponsor of your Ottawa Senators. Also for our YouTube gang, please hit that hype button. And for everyone else, just please like and subscribe to the show. It really helps us out. And today we are joined by an author and someone that covers the Ottawa Senators, a good friend of mine on the Senators beat, the one and only Julian McKenzie of The Athletic. And everyone should check out his new book, Black Aces. But he'll be better at talking about the book. But should be a fun show. Obviously, the Senators won a big game yesterday afternoon against the Washington Capitals, and we've got that all covered as well. So hit it.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to the Sick Podcast. Sens Spotlight.
Here's Alfredson, bursts the speed, gets a shot away, scores! Daniel Alfredson ends the game in overtime and sends the Ottawa Senators to the Stanley Cup Final for the first time in franchise history.
The sickest Ottawa Senators podcast. It's gonna be sick.
And we are joined by Julian McKenzie once again. Thanks so much for coming on the show. And you have a book in store, so maybe you want to talk a little bit about that because it drops pretty soon.
February 3rd, baby.
Let's go.
Yeah. Black Aces. I've only been promoting this book for like 6 months.
Just 6? Yeah, maybe make it 12. No.
Yeah, man. Just a series of profiles on Black hockey players, past and present. Conversations with players like Joe McGinley, Grant Fuhr. There's some little excerpts of an interview I did with PK Subban in there as well. George Laraque, Anson Carter, Quinton Byfield, Blake Bolden. There's a lot. There's a lot of players you might have heard of, players you might not have heard of. And even if there are specific chapters on certain people, there are different stories that are spread out throughout the book. Like Layla Edwards, who was named to the U.S. Olympic team for the women's team. She's going to be the first Black player to represent Team USA at the Winter Games for women's hockey. She's mentioned in the Blake Bolden chapter, for example. There are mentions of Mike Greer, the first Black GM in the National Hockey League. Tony McKegney, there's a chapter on him, but he played with Val James, who I believe is the first Black U.S. player to play in the NHL. Great time profiling all of these people for the book, and I hope people pre-order and get these books in. The release date is February 3rd. I'm holding this like this is I mean, maybe one day it'll happen, but this is as close as I can get right now to holding my own newborn child. So I'm very happy about it. Very excited about this.
We won't ask you if you ever have a kid to compare, but I will say, I've ordered it. I'm hoping mine arrives in the mail pretty soon. I'm really excited to just read it and just it's an underexplored story, as you know, of course, of just the plight of Black hockey players, in the game that we love. So I'm really excited to read it, and thanks so much for talking about it. And get yours wherever you get your books. I'm plugging for you just to to begin the show. Maybe transitioning a little bit to the Senators a little bit. It's been a weird past maybe month or so. It's been up and down and sideways and everything in between. How do you feel about this team right now, Julian?
Yeah, I think the way you've described it is pretty close to how I would feel. Just a roller coaster of different emotions. It feels like this team hasn't necessarily found a consistent run of play where they've fully been able to implement their style for a really long period of time and show themselves as a true contending team. And what's also been weird is, and I know you follow fans' reactions as closely as I do, probably more than me, but seeing fans kind of go one way and be like, "Oh, this team sucks. Like this, we got time to hit the panic button." Then you look at the standings and you're like, "Oh, they're only 3 or 4 points out of a playoff spot." I think the combination of the Senators not being consistent enough as they would like, and the standings being as compressed as they've been. We've asked guys on this team throughout the year about it, and they say they've never seen anything like this. That contributes to why, one, I don't think it's fair to hit the panic button as of yet, and two, just further describes how weird this season has been. I still think of Drake Batherson from a couple games ago saying that, there's an opportunity for them. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but an opportunity for them to collect a couple wins before the Christmas break, so that way they could kind of separate themselves from the pack, because that's what the best team in this division is going to do. In the Atlantic Division, they get themselves a couple of wins and they put themselves away from the peloton where teams are trying to climb into the playoffs and there's a whole bunch of muck and mess. The Sens just haven't done that yet. If anything, if they lost that game against the Capitals, a 4-game losing streak undoes the work of that 4-game winning streak they had a couple games ago. It's been really weird to follow this season so far.
I think you hit it on the nail in terms of this team has been super streaky, right? So, like, they've had big winning streaks. Oh, they haven't had the longest winning streaks, but they've had a couple winning streaks. They've had a couple long losing streaks as well. Or they had that point streak for a while in November where I think it was in 10 of 11 or 11 of 12 games they secured a point, and then they go on the road and Brady Tkachuk comes back and they lose 5 of their first 6 with their captain back, right? So it's just been this up and down year. I don't know if you feel this way, and I'm curious because obviously we don't know much about what's happened to Linus Ullmark. It's unclear when or if he'll return for the rest of the season, obviously dealing with a personal matter. But how much trust do you have in Levi Merrillainen? Because the Senators, if you look at any goaltending, category with Ullmark as well, of course, they're worse in team save percentage. I think they have the worst penalty kill save percentage of all time if the season ended right now. And that's not on the goalies. But how much trust do you have in Merrillainen, and how just important is it that if the Senators need him to be the guy right now for this team?
I think in a short sample size, which, funny enough, that sample size of the handful of games he played last year was enough for the Sens to put trust in him. I'll say it like this. In a short sample size for this team, if they only need him for a couple more games, I think you can weather the storm. If it gets to a point where this team is going to be without Linus Ullmark for a considerable amount of time, you have to think about adding a veteran option to supplant what you have. I'm not going to speculate with Linus Ullmark. Obviously, you hope the best for him with whatever he has going on, but I it's kind of difficult to answer this question because we don't know how long the Senators will be without Linus Ullmark. But if it does get to a point where the Senators say, you know what, we need a proven third option to kind of stem the tide here, maybe that says something about how long Linus Ullmark will actually be gone. But also, I think Levi Merrillainen has had better performances since the beginning of this year. I definitely think he could stand to be a little bit more consistent on his own. And what's also just as concerning is, like, Hunter Shepard has been up with this team the last few days, and he's, throughout this point in his career, he's been more of a tweener than anything else. And the fact that we haven't seen, things could change for Saturday, but Matt Sogard hasn't been called up yet. And up until the other night where he had a shutout, I don't think his AHL season's been that great either. So you could even make the argument the Sens might still need another veteran goalie in their stable anyway, regardless of what happens with Linus Ullmark. I think this position has been too crucial for them over the years. Linus Ullmark, even before that game against the Leafs, the start of the season wasn't good enough for him. He was trying to put together a better December, but that Toronto game, it just felt like more of what we've seen from Linus Ullmark to this point, right? I think that, and while I think it's very difficult, I'm not going to say it's easy for them to just find a goaltender off the street and have them play, but I think if you're Steve Stais, it's worth looking at the market and seeing if there's a guy who could be made available for you, and you maybe have to make a trade to land them, or you pluck the next available guy off waivers. I think the goaltending for this team needs to be better.
I saw Hunter Shepard was the expected goalie against the Colorado Avalanche this week, later next week, and I almost fell off my chair. I'm like, yeah, and I had nothing against Hunter Shepard, and maybe he plays great, but he has 5 games of NHL experience, and he could be playing on the second night of a back-to-back against Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar.
And look, if it's at a point where you have to wait another week, you don't lose a season in a week. If this is something where you're letting this go until the Olympic break, and then on the other side of that, you don't know what could happen, I don't know. Maybe you have to think about it. I'm not sure.
And I think that's we don't know.
And we don't know how long.
We don't know how long he's out for, right? And that feels like that kind of I'm not trying to belittle the situation, but it almost feels like where the Senators are. We don't know how they've been playing. Like to me, they've been really befuddling in a lot of ways, and the goaltending position has clearly been, their ultimate kryptonite. Like any team, right? If any team has the worst save percentage in the league, they are never going to make the playoffs. I did some digging, and the last team to do it was the 18-19 Sharks with Martin Jones, right? It's very rare that you have really bad goaltending and you're a good team. And the Senators are still, as you said, 3 points out of a playoff spot, so they're not that far back. At the same time, with Levi Merilainen, the eye test gives me a little bit more hope, but he still has a bad goal in him, right? I think that Columbus game was kind of part and parcel for that. I thought, Travis Green said it yesterday. Levy was a bit nervous to begin the game, and I think that kind of explains a little bit of, in a sense, his inexperience and being a young goalie with less than really 30 games.
A bit nervous is surprising to hear, because it seems like last year we did not hear that at all. He got thrown into a situation where Linus Ullmark was hurt, Matt Sogard wasn't the guy, and there was some doubts on, and Anton Forsberg got hurt too. And not once did I hear anybody say that Levi Merilainen was nervous for any of this. And the characteristics around Levi Merilainen is that he's supposed to be ice cold and supposed to be this guy who he's not supposed to let that affect him. So hearing that he was nervous ahead of a game is very strange.
Yeah, and I mean, I've
not saying he's invincible, but
no,
that's really intriguing to hear for a guy who impressed as much as he did last year. And now you're looking at his statistics. You're looking at his last few games. This guy only has 2 wins in his last 6.
He doesn't have a road win all year.
He's very much a goaltender still in development. But I have to admit, if I'm the Sens, I'm a little bit let down at how Levi Merilainen is given the opportunity to be a number 2. He impressed enough last year, and you still need more from him.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Like I was surprised that Hunter Shepard, he's really a really good AHL goalie. I think the signing of him in this offseason, 2-time Calder Cup champion, was really to solidify Belleville rather than really make any impression on the Senators itself. Who knows? Maybe I'm not inside the mind of Steve Stais, but at the same time, like as good as Levi Merrill, and I was a full believer, like full disclosure. Like I thought I watched him.
He earned it.
Athletic.
He absolutely earned
it. I love his mindset, everything. It hasn't worked out this year. I still think there's time. I do think him getting the net consistently will be beneficial for him, but the Senators are one injury away from Mads Sogard or Hunter Shepard being the guy, right? And that really scares me, especially with where you look around the league. All these teams have 3 really viable goalies. Look at the Leafs, look at the Canadians, other teams, right? And the fact of the matter is Stais didn't really address his goaltending position in terms of NHL depth in the offseason. And I think right now with, as you mentioned, so much parity, who's willing to give away even the 3rd goalie right now with so many teams in the mix? So I think the Senators are kind of caught in a pretty tough position right now. And I think their best hope is really twofold. Obviously, Allmark comes back and shows himself to be the guy that they paid. And hopefully, whatever personal with him kind of is resolved as best as it can be. And at the same time that Levi Merilainen can regain his form that he had last year when he did actually get an extended period of time, because Allmark and Forsberg were out in a similar situation and was unreal. And I thought the game last night, or yesterday afternoon, just to be frank, I thought made a couple really big saves in that second period. He had one on Ovechkin on a power play, just a couple really timely saves. None of the goals were his fault as well. And I think those were the saves Ottawa's really been missing this year, that they're in the game, they're down 2-1, they're coming back, and then it's 3-1, and then they're chasing it even more. He made the big enough saves at the big time, and hopefully that can translate moving forward. But yeah, Senators are in a difficult position, and I wonder if Steve Stais tries to make a move.
I think for Steve Stais entering the trade deadline in 2 months, I don't know how you look at this roster. I don't know how you look at the contracts you've signed and where everyone's supposed to be expired, and the fact you might, at least as of right now, you don't have a 1st-round pick for the upcoming draft. I don't know how you look at this team and you don't make a move. I just me talking here, I've been banging on the drum saying that this team needs an upgrade on the wing, but I'm of the belief, maybe even more so now, they need someone on defense to shore up their defensive depth. And I know people are going to hear this and be like, hey, it should be Carter Yakupchuk time. Get yourself, if you're the Sens, get a proven defenseman who can soak up those minutes on a second or a third pairing. I thought Nick Jensen getting scratched, of course, he comes back and he played decently enough. I guess
Travis Green said he liked his game. I did not feel that way, but
I think the fact he got a goal, good on him for that. I think there were some other points where he could have been a lot better. Didn't like him on that first goal allowed, or whichever one was just.
He took a bad penalty that led to the second goal. Like
the ultimate point with Nick Jensen with me is the fact that you've introduced the fact that he could get scratched. That tells me. And you look at his play as well, like there needs to be depth there. I don't know if Nick Jensen is an everyday second pairing defenseman on this team anymore. No. Just like I'm not as convinced that Jordan Spence might be an everyday second pairing defenseman on this team. Clearly, those two guys at the stages of their careers, well, I think Spence has room to grow. I think this team would be better served with having a solidified second pairing guy, and then you have like a rotation with some of those other defensemen below them. I just think for them to make a real run in the playoffs, you need a solid body who could soak up minutes, play well defensively. If they can kill penalties, that's even better for this group that has struggled with that throughout this season. I'm of the mindset now where if I'm Steve Stais, as much as I would like to see this team add an attacking player, I think if you're Steve Stais, you have to find a way to add a proven defenseman who can show up your top four. I don't know if Rasmus Andersson is willing to come to Ottawa. I don't know what the no trade situation is like for him. If I could target him, if I could bring him to my team, I would. I think this dude could play any type of situation you need him to play. And I think he brings that snarl that this team very much wants to implement on their group. That's a guy I would love to add to this team. Of course, you have to figure out if that's even a team he'd even want to play for. It seems as if he would much rather be in the Western Conference and play in either California or Vegas, at least off of reports that we've heard. But if I'm the Sens, I would love to add a guy like Rasmus Andersson to my team.
I think the problem right now for this team is they don't have a lot of assets. You alluded to it. They don't have their first round pick. I mean, that might change. I still am dubious that they don't get their first round pick. Until it
happens, I'm operating on the side that says they don't have.
But also,
and I think that's what the organization has to do too.
But also, more importantly, I'd be shocked if somehow their first round pick is available by the deadline to trade. So at this point, you're not trading it at the deadline, right? So with that being in mind, the next step for this team right now is how do you basically add a coveted player as a right shot defense, top four defenseman, when you don't have very many prospects and draft capital. You look at Yakupchuk and Hensler, like Hensler's had a so-so World Juniors. I'm not saying that's the be-all end-all of his development, but I wouldn't say he's kind of, been unreal considering, he was a first-round pick last year. Carter Yakupchuk puts up points, but defensively seems very far away from the NHL, right? And they passed on Boehm, who else? Perek, who is like a mini Erik Karlsson, all offense, no defense at that same age. Sam Dickinson's been an effective player for San Jose. Like they missed on a lot of guys who have all played in the NHL and are playing at a varying degrees of success. So right now, this team's I think they have to make a hockey trade of some sort. I do think if it's for the right guy, they have to trade their 2027 first round pick if it makes sense. But I think you look at guys like Zetterlund, maybe Spence. I think Jensen might be traded as a salary cap filler, but those types of guys, what are those guys' value? And maybe even a Halliday, who I've really liked of late. I think he's really turning himself into a player, but they're kind of stuck in this perilous position where they know what they need to add, and at the same time, it's going to be very difficult for them to add. And I wonder if it's almost a marginal move to just say, hey, we're going to upgrade our top four. It's not going to be a Rasmus Andersson, McKenzie Weegar, that ilk, but it's going to be a really good player. Does that move the needle? I don't think so, but I do think it does make them a better team. And I think, you talked about the forward group, just last one. I actually like could they use another goal scoring winger? For sure. I think that's still need. to me, it's all on defense right now in terms of where they need to improve.
I think the reason why I've harped on the offense is more just the fact that there's been such a revolving door with their lines throughout the year. Like there have been instances where you see Nick Cousins play fourth line, he plays first line on different moments. There's been different wingers alongside Tim Stützle at center. Even Tim Stützle has played wing, and that's not to say that lines are always going to stay in place. I mean, we've seen Travis Green. He very much likes his duos. He likes keeping two guys together, and he can add a different third guy if you need to. And it's going to happen in games where you need a spark, you need to change lines. And and guys, look, I get it. Like, you want that consistency with lines, but it's good when guys are able to play with each other and you're able to just reestablish your chemistry. But if you're in a position where at a moment's notice and you're trying to get offense going, but you have to plug in a guy like David Perron to get that offense, or Lars Eller, great guys who I think work for a bottom six when they're healthy, but I don't know if you need them to be your bona fide guys in the top six. I just think the Sens would be better off just sticking some type of player that could make that offense work. But to your point, while I think there have been some blips at 5-on-5 with their offense, for the most part, they've been able to produce from guys up and down the lineup at forward. So I can understand, and I do agree. I think the emphasis will need to be on defense, just because after that Sanderson-Zub pairing, I think Thomas Chabot, you put a really good defenseman next to him who's a bit more consistent with his play this year compared to what it's been like for Nick Jensen, and a little bit with Jordan Spence, who I think has also been really good. I just think that maybe in that top four role, maybe not every day, but I think he's been solid regardless. I think if they upgraded at that position and maybe you bump down Spence to a third pairing with Tyler Clevin, then you go out with a really solid defense core.
For sure. And, I was just looking at the numbers. Like, they're sixth in 5-on-5 goals per game. Their shooting percentage is high, but it's not like first or anything like that. Like, I genuinely think like they're a good offensive team as currently constructed. But, as much as I think they're 10th last in defense in terms of goals allowed right now, a lot of that's on the goaltending, but some of that's on the defense, as you said. And, it feels like for the last almost decade that Thomas Chabot's been in the league, we've always been asking who's the perfect player for him. And we saw glimpses of that with Dylan DeMello, Artem Zub before he went with Jake Sanderson, and obviously Nick Jensen last year. And now that question is back again as to who should play with Thomas Chabot. And I think he's had a pretty good year, all things considered. He always has a little bit of a ward in him, but that play he made to find Fabian Zetterlund, like no one on the Senators back end makes that play, even Jake Sanderson, in my opinion. So,
wow,
they're in a good place, I think, on the left side. Maybe want another depth guy, which, obviously Donovan Zabrango got picked up on waivers, and that's kind of changed, I think, the dynamic, especially when Clevin was out. But to me, I think, for the Senators right now, Nick Jensen is not one of their six best defensemen. I don't think Jordan Spence has played particularly well, but I think he brings enough offensively. And I think, honestly, his faults defensively has been as much with his play with the puck, like Jensen, as it has been just like the lack of size. And for me, maybe we should be giving credit to Nicholas Manpalo, a guy who's going to the Olympics. For me, he rarely makes any mistakes. And you know what? For a bottom pair guy, that's kind of all you ask for. He's big, strong, great skater. So I think Nick Jensen, he scares me on the top four right now. Just honestly, his decisions. I think his bot, like, he seems to be skating all right. He just makes weird decisions, like that first goal where he's like spun around, losing three guys, like turning around. It seems like all the time, overly aggressive and then not aggressive enough on a certain place. I don't know how that's happened. It didn't feel like that last year, but I'm not trying to denigrate the guy. Like, he's been a really good NHLer for a long time, but right now, like, I don't think the solution is from within, and I don't think Jordan Spence can be a top four guy. Just he's too much of a liability defensively.
I think Jordan has tried to make strides to improve himself defensively and to at least be harder on pucks. I think that was the big talking point with him when he was in the first few games of the year, when the talking point was, why is he not on the lineup? Why is he not playing as many games as people would like? But yeah, I just think with those two guys particularly, not to make it just about them, but I think going into the playoffs, if this Sens group finds a way to get themselves there, if they continue to play at the race that they've been playing at, like, don't be surprised if the Sens end up with a roster that starts off game one of the playoffs and they lean more towards size. I still think with the way they started game one of this year, while I understand that Jordan Spence has had the time to get himself better, I still think it was really indicative of where they want to end up being when the playoffs start. This is a team that wants to be bigger on the back end, that wants to be physical, that wants to be mean. And while I think Jordan Spence brings that element of offense, they clearly saw him as someone who could soak up the minutes for Nick Jensen while he got better, and then they'd figure out the rest as they go on. In a perfect world, those two guys maybe rotate in on a third pairing. And I don't know if people want to hear that, but like, I think they'd much rather have a much bigger, more imposing body on a second pair with Thomas Chabot than to start Nick Jensen and Jordan Spence on a second pair. Just in spite of whatever offense Jordan can bring, and in spite of whatever veteran presence Nick Jensen has, especially now where clearly he's how many months off? He's how many months off after a hip surgery, right? Like,
yeah,
he has lost a step because of that. I think that's more than fair to say.
For sure. I think it's more than fair to say. And I think the Senators realize that their blue line is just not big enough. And, Jake Sanderson's obviously, a huge guy, but he's not an imposing player. I'm not critiquing Jake Sanderson's game to be clear.
Jake Sanderson, like you got to ignore the first pairing because Sanderson and Zub, that is
that pairing,
that's an elite pairing.
That is an elite pairing, and I think that's the one thing where I really actually believe in the Senators team right now is that they're actually really good at thwarting the other team's best players. It's honestly their second and third pairings that are really taking them down right now. And that seems like, to me, that's an easier fix to make than trying to find, your top pair. It's easier to find that second, third, of course, and just obviously asset wise and trying to get those guys in. So I think the fact that Sanderson and Stützle, I don't know if you feel the same way, but just with this season, and maybe to ask you, does this team find its way back into a playoff spot? The biggest reasons I have for hope is the way Jake Sanderson and Tim Stützle have been playing, because they, to me, have been playing at such a higher level than they were last year, especially Tim Stützle. And I think that changes the dynamic of the team. If you have, I think Sanderson's in the vicinity of a top 5 defenseman in the league, and I think Tim Stützle's closing in on a top 10 center in the league. And when you're in that category, obviously your threshold to win, becomes, larger. And I think this team's in a really good place with those two. And I don't know what you think about that.
But what about everyone else? Because I agree. Jake Sanderson, since this point last year, has done everything he can to improve his game. And now we're at a point where more and more people are starting to realize how good of a player this guy is. Tim Stützle has been playing really well. He had a bit of a lull in November, but he's found his game right back. But Brady Tkachuk was not mentioned in those two players you mentioned. And maybe the last couple of games, he could stand to be a little bit better. I don't subscribe to the theory that some people think that is like, oh, he's just protecting himself from the Olympics. This is a guy who wants to play. This is a guy who wants to impose himself every single night. But yeah, I think Brady Tkachuk could stand to be a little bit better from his last few games. I think that's fair to say. But he needs to play better. I think there are other guys up and down the lineup who need to be better.
How do you maybe just explain his play this year? It feels like he's had 3 or 4 that is Brady Tkachuk at his best level, and it feels like there's been too many games where it feels like he hasn't imposed himself enough. And what do you think of the narrative, as much as it is because he has that thumb injury? Not that he's trying to save himself, but he doesn't want to get hurt. He can't kind of unleash himself the same way that he could if he was 100% healthy.
If that's what it is, that's surprising to me, because that's not the Brady Tkachuk I've come to know. I understand that wanting to play at the Olympics is a dream of his. Getting that taste of playing best on best at 4 Nations, it's something that he craved. Getting to play with his brother obviously means something to him. But Brady Tkachuk is a professional, and he plays in the National Hockey League, and he plays to be a bully and imposing and a shift disturber. I don't know, man. This is not a guy I'm expecting to see, not play at 100%. And I don't necessarily mean health here. I expect a guy who is going to be on it every night. And I don't know. It's been weird to see. There's been a couple of games where he can stand to be a little better.
For me, it's not necessarily like I'm not questioning his like work ethic or his like
I'm
determination.
not questioning his work ethic or
No,
determination. I'm
oh,
just
no.
saying there have been games where he has not looked like the Brady Tkachuk we expect to see every single night.
But for me, it's like just thinking about it, the psyche of these guys. It's like when Brady's Brady, he will like launch himself at scrums, right? He will throw guys on the ground if he wants to, if he feels like the team needs a boost, right? And when you have a thumb that's broken and you have the Olympics there and you just know that it's, probably not 100% and that any fight or any skirmish could lead to a re-aggravation, I can see how you're like, you know what, I'm going to like pass on this one. Not that like on the ice, he's like, oh, I'm not trying it's more of those little things that kind of energize him. And we'll see, who knows? I wonder if after the Olympics, presuming he's healthy, that we might see a different Tkachuk with the playoffs if Ottawa's still in a hunt or trying to cement themselves into a playoff spot, and he's like, okay, the Olympics are gone, and also just like I have nothing to lose at this point. We need to make this game in March matters as much as right as the finishing line approaches. And I wonder.
I already got my silver medal from the Olympics. It is what it is.
Silver.
You think they're winning?
Did
fourth
they get
place.
You
think fourth place?
The Americans went to the Olympics with NHLers. They came fourth. I don't know. I like Team Sweden. I think if Russia was in it, but I do think maybe on that, because I was thinking I tweeted about this earlier. What do you think of Shane Pinto not making the team? Because for me, I'm not aggrieved that he didn't make the team. I'm aggrieved that some of the guys made it over him he seems to be a better fit for the role, specifically like a Vincent Trocheck. Like
you don't like Vincent Trocheck. That's the guy I saw you specified in your tweet, if I recall correctly.
He's an all right player, but he's not a defensive force by no means. He's not having a great year. I didn't think he played very well at the Four Nations last year. Pinto went to the World Championships, won you a gold. Like, I think Cole Caulfield, Jason Robertson are more skilled players. They're not guys that I want to be playing on a fourth line. So if that's what Bill Guerin had in mind, why aren't you bringing one of probably the top 5 defensive shutdown forwards in the league?
Because he doesn't see him every night the same way he sees Vincent Trocheck.
Yeah,
and sorry, I don't mean Bill Guerin in this case. I mean Mike Sullivan, who coaches Vincent Trocheck. And JT Miller to that effect too.
JT Miller, I don't know if he should be on the team either. Like I think Miller's a better player, when he's locked in, because he's had his moments than Trocheck for sure. So I kind of give that one a bit of a slide. But I don't know, like even like last night, Shane Pinto made 2 really smart plays to create those 2 goals to get Ottawa back in the game. Every analytic screams at you that this guy is like Patrice Bergeron light, as our co-host Pierre Maguire always talks about, right? Like he is so good in his own end. He can give you goals. He can make enough. Has a great shot. Like he's not like a complete like Philip Danault where he's not going to really give you anything offensively. He can still create. So to me, I just don't understand the reasoning, but I don't know what you think.
I think I'll say this: like when we chatted with Mike Sullivan a couple weeks ago, he was very complimentary of Shane Pinto, and he's very aware of how good he is defensively. And while I'll put it this way, I think he makes a better case for himself if he doesn't get hurt in December, which is really unfortunate for Shane.
Do you really think that made a huge difference? I don't know if I feel, but I'm curious to hear.
No. Here's the thing, right? Like, I think if he plays, he gives himself more games to make his point that he should be on the team as opposed to some of the other guys that might have been named. But I think when you're a bubble guy in consideration for these rosters, any time missed just hurts your chances of making that impression. While I think that while I can subscribe to the idea that maybe Mike Sullivan was always going to lean on a Vincent Trocheck in that spot anyway, if Shane Pinto got himself that month of December to really show why he should be on Team USA, then at the very least you have more of like a tale of the tape to make between Trocheck and Pinto potentially. Remember, not only he played on that World Championship team in the spring that won gold at the end. Like we're not talking about a guy who was on the outside looking in and needed to curry more favor with USA management. They're more than familiar with who he is. So yeah, I would say it's probably the biggest snub of all the potential Sens guys, of course, for not making a team. And a bit unfortunate that he doesn't get there, because I thought he had a really good start to his season. And since he's been back, I think he's looked just fine. He's starting to shake off some of that rust.
Yeah, and for me, I don't know about the injury, but I totally get your point. For me, it's more of the Connor Bedard. Like I think Bedard's injury helps the explanation rather than the result, right? I don't know if the result would have been different, but the explanation of the result is much easier now, right?
It's a fair point to look at.
Like,
I mean,
because think about if Connor Bedard, right, juxtapose it a little bit. If Connor Bedard was at like 4th in the league in scoring, didn't get hurt, what was it, 2 weeks ago, right? And is out for another month or so, give or take. If he was in that ilk and it's New Year's Eve and Canada says, nope, we're not taking the guy who's 4th in the league in points, there's an outcry. But with the injury,
we'd be mad as hell. People
right?
would be absolutely.
But I don't know if Team Canada would have taken him either way, right?
Like, I don't know if they would have either. To be honest, I have no idea. I don't.
They dropped Sam Bennett, and I don't love Sam Bennett as a player, but look at the way he played at the Four Nations, and he won the Conn Smythe for a reason. It wasn't because he sucked, right, or wasn't good in the big games. And I wonder if that's, all these teams you look back on and judge what, after the results, right? It's all 2020.
It's a lot easier to do that. 2020 vision, whatever. Hindsight.
But to me, Sam Bennett would have been great at least as an option. And, I think Bo Horvat's a really good player. He got hurt, so maybe, who knows, hopefully for Bo Horvat, he gets to go, because I don't want to tell someone that he shouldn't be on the Olympics after he made the team or shouldn't go or anything like that. But yeah, it's interesting to see. And I think maybe wider point specifically to the guys like Brady, Timmy, and Sanderson. What do you think maybe the Olympics will do for their development moving forward?
Well, I mean, essentially any opportunity for those guys to play best on best, to play in games that matter for this group of players, it's always going to be massive for this group. This is what this organization has been craving for their best players, and for them to get that opportunity to play playoffs last year obviously meant a lot. So yeah, I would imagine for those guys, whether it's Tim, whether it's Brady, whether it's Jake, Nicholas, anyone who's going to play at the Olympics, any opportunity where they get to play against the best players in the world, it's going to serve them right, because of that experience of playing in games that matter. That obviously I think will be tied to them with that.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe just like switching gears a little bit, like what do you think about maybe like a guy like Ridley Gregg right now? Because it seems like he's really taken shape. He has 3 goals in the last 4 games. He's been went back to the 4th line center, or kind of with Halliday, with Pinto back. I really feel like he's gearing up into form, and he's really kind of turned his season around after a pretty slow start.
Yeah, I liked him in the little bit of games where he got to play on that 3rd line with Amadio and Giroux on his flanks. The fact that he feels comfortable at center, and that's position he wants to thrive in. The versatility that he brings, being able to play wing and center, that's a great guy to have in your bottom 6. I thought he's played pretty well, and the fact that he's not afraid to muck it up, like I like Ridley Gregg for this team. And when I think about the identity of this group, in them trying to be tougher to play against, Ridley Gregg is at the forefront of that. So yeah, I don't have too many complaints with that. What I do wonder, though, to bring up an earlier point of yours, if you're going to make a hockey trade, are you ready to put Ridley Gregg in that trade to make that work?
I think, yeah, we talk about this in the press box all the time. Graham Nichols as well. For me, the guy that I would, if I had to ship off anyone, would be Zetterlund. And I know he scored that big goal last night, and I think he's rounded into form for sure. I think when he plays with Tkachuk and Stützle, they're a very effective line. It feels like their analytics outweigh maybe, their goal totals. Like, it doesn't feel like they're scoring as much as they should be. And maybe that's a byproduct of Zetterlund, who obviously is a sniper at heart, but isn't of that elite tier. He's more of a, he's on pace for 21 goals right now, right? So, which is it's a good season, probably worth the money, give or take, that he's making. But to me, I think you can figure that slot out a little bit more if you bring in a right shot defenseman. more than Greg were. But at the same time, you do have a surplus of centers, right? And is Ridley Gregg going to be a fourth line center forever? Probably not. Is he really a top 6 guy? Probably. I don't think he'll ever really be of that mold.
I don't know if he is.
Right?
I think it's okay if his ceiling is a top 9 center. That's okay. I think for this group, that's okay.
The one thing that I push back on, and I've talked to Graham and Nichols about this, is that he to me, he's like the perfect playoff player.
Yeah.
Right? Like in the regular season, he might only get you 25, 30 points. But in the playoffs, I feel like he's such a, as you said, shift disturber. That's the element that I don't love taking off this team. But like, is that the guy that you feel has like the most value that you think could legitimately be kind of in that conversation for getting traded?
Well, I don't want to get to a point where I'm like suggesting like too many or anybody getting traded,
Sure.
But like still at the same time, depending on what move you want to make, if you're trying to move guys off your roster, that's someone you might have to think about. I would say. I still wonder with Fabian Zetterlund though, at the contract that he signed for. One, like, is anyone that like hot to take that deal? Also, let's say you make that move, you move off Zetterlund, you get a top end defenseman out of it, which you help your defense. I mean, I guess you trust your offense is still going to be good, even though you might not have those projected 21 goals.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's such a weird, like, it's not, I should say weirdly made team, but like there's something about the depth at both of those positions where you have to ultimately maybe take from one to make the other one work in a trade if it comes down to that. And then you're wondering like, hey, like, do you have enough with what you have to make up the difference? Like, I think that's worth asking with this team.
I think you hit it on the nail. They're one player short on both sides of on the forward group and the defensive group. And that's why it feels like they're kind of patchworking, and Nick Jensen in the top 4. Who's that, fourth guy in the top 4? Who's that other top 6 guy to make the 6, right? The one guy, like, I think Dylan Cousins played really well of late, but I would say he probably has the most value of all of those guys for sure. I think he's played much better defensively of late. He's driving play better. At the same time, I don't think he's like a world beater. And I wonder if there's a trade out there, if it's now or in the offseason, where you can get your top 6, top 4 shutdown defenseman, right shot guy, and you trade Cousins because he has the most value to get you that type of player. And then you put Pinto at 2C and Ridley Gregg at 3C. And that feels like, sure, obviously you want to have Cousins as part of the mix, but I wonder if that's the guy that can get you something really good in return. But obviously you're not trading Cousins to improve your forward depth. Like, you're going to take one and lose one. But I wonder if that's something that maybe down the line would make sense. But obviously it would have to be for like a McKenzie Weegar where you have a guy for a long time or something like that. And I don't even know if that trade is the right trade to make. But I think that's where we're at with this team, where how do they plug the holes that they have? And it's going to be really hard to do. Like, you need to do some, trade gymnastics to make it happen.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm not a GM, and I'm glad I'm not a GM, and I'm glad I don't have to do those trade gymnastics in real life. I still don't get why, and I'm not just saying you, I still don't get why people are rushed to put Dylan Cousins as a trade consideration, but I they made the trade to get this guy. I think he's played really well on that top 6. He could stand. I mean, I get the defensive concerns, but I agree with you. I think he's played a little bit better defensively. I don't know. Part of me feels like if he gets traded off this team, even if you bump up a Shane Pinto in that spot, aren't you going to feel like this team is missing a player like Cousins anyway?
Sure,
with the size that he has. Like, wouldn't you rather have a situation where you have Cousins and Pinto in the middle of your lineup, and then you can plug in Ridley Gregg as a 4C if you need, as opposed to a Lars Eller who you already have? Like, I just think through the playoffs, like, you need your center depth to be like true to form top to bottom. And unless you're getting a bona fide player who could be an established star at whatever position you put him, I'm very hesitant to move off that center group.
For me, and you lived this trade with the Athletic, in Calgary. But I think the Senators are a Matthew Tkachuk type trade, ironically, away from becoming a contender.
Yeah, but like
Where you
every team
sure,
is a Matthew Tkachuk player away.
No, but I meant more the way the minutia of that trade, where you trade two really good players. Obviously, Huberdeau was like an all-star, had 100 points, was unreal. Like, and the Senators don't have that player that they're going to trade. But my point being is that you trade two really good players off your roster for a guy that's great, right? You know, as good. Like, I love McKenzie Weegar. Obviously, Huberdeau struggled, but like, you make that trade 10 times out of 10, right? And for Dylan Cousins, it's not
To
that I
add
don't.
to that, 2 players, a prospect, and a first-round pick.
Sure.
And you got a 4th rounder and a really great player out of it.
Yeah, but I guess my larger point is more the idea of like, you make a hockey trade for the star player now, and you lose some good NHL players to really good NHL players like Dylan Cousins to make your team solidified. You probably don't make that trade, you know, with Cousins to add a forward. Maybe I can't think of that, but it's likely going to be on the back end. And I think right now, if Ottawa added one more really good right shot defenseman, I actually really like their offensive game. I think Drake Batherson's really turned into a heck of a player.
Year.
His contract negotiations potentially this summer will be interesting if the Senators try to extend him. You know, be ready for that. But I think this team's in a weird place, I guess, just to sum it up, where they're pretty good, but their flaws are dragging them down immensely more than most teams. And how do you square that circle? I don't know. But I do think this team is a playoff team at its heart. But if they don't get saves, if their PK still sucks, if they still can't really be just like that defensive or that mental mistake away from losing a bunch of close games, then obviously, you know, they are where they are in the standings kind of because of it right now.
Yeah, someone on Twitter described it perfectly, where it feels like the issues that have come up with the Sens, it's like a whack-a-mole where goaltending comes up, the PK comes up, 5-on-5 scoring comes up, injuries come up. Like, goaltending is probably the biggest problem that has plagued this team, but there have been so many other issues that have popped up at inopportune times that have also contributed to the Sens' inconsistencies through the first half of the year. It's been really weird to follow this group, but I do think I can agree. I think if you take that step back, yeah, fine, goaltending is the biggest issue, but there's been so many other little things as well.
Yeah, I don't know if you feel the same way, Julian, when you look at like all the metrics and they're like, Sens 8th, 9th, 10th, like all the the things that, and then your eye test is like, yeah, they basically outplay teams most nights, and then they're where they are in the standings. I find that really infuriating, because I'm just like, how do I write about or cover this team without, like, they are losing, right? But they play pretty well, but then every little mistake goes in and then they lose 4-3, right? So it's felt like that kind of season. And I do think, you know, like any team, but this team in particular, I think they need to find a way to start grinding out results like they did in November. Because it wasn't pretty, but it was effective. And I think that's the type of game the Senators need right now, is just like finding ways to get to overtime most nights. If it's like, you cannot lead the league in 1-goal games lost, right? And that's kind of where the Senators are at. I think they literally were until I haven't checked it in like 2 weeks, but they had lost the most 1-goal games this year. That's the area where this team needs to kind of find a way to hunker down and just grind out results game after game like they did in November.
But I also think that they can play a style through being able to grind down other teams where it doesn't have to just be a 1-goal win. They've had results this year where they've looked like the better team through, even if it's just 40 minutes. If they just convert more of those chances, then they turn those 1-goal games into 2-3-goal games. It's just a matter of putting together those efforts so they could play 60 minutes longer. Like, I think in a lot of those metrics that we've looked at, yes, like the Sens have shown that they've been able to generate chances and can play well defensively. It's just finding ways to not have lapses in their game where it's a lapse in the second period that takes them out of a game. It's a bad start that takes them out of it. It's very hard to play 60 minutes in this league. I get it. It's very hard to play against most of these teams in the NHL, but the Ottawa Senators have shown that they can win games and hang with anybody. They need to be more consistent in how they show that, I think.
Yeah, exactly, and we'll find out soon enough, Julian, as the season progresses, because there's a lot of games in January. So hold on to your horses and be ready for a lot of Sens games. I will say, I don't know if fans feel this way or you feel this way. When there's a lot of back-to-backs, I kind of get giddy about it. I'm like, ooh, a lot of hockey to watch. I'm excited. I hate the lulls. I hate like that. What was it? 3 days and break between the Columbus game and the Washington game. I'm starting to.
You hate Christmas?
No, that was after Christmas. It was after Christmas. So yeah,
No,
I don't hate Christmas.
I don't know.
My family. Yeah. I'm the Grinch. Yeah,
I'll play. You're right. Because it was
I'm
Buffalo and then Christmas and then it got to Toronto actually, and then Columbus and then Washington. Yeah. Sorry, excuse me.
Well,
my Christmas joke failed.
Yeah, last one maybe. What's your New Year's resolution for this team? What's one?
One New Year's resolution for this team: be bold. Take that next step.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Swing for the fences, and if you strike out, at least you tried to strike out. But just don't do it the Pierre Dorian way and trade people that are going to leave in a year. Make sure you have the guy for like more than 2 or 3 years. Please, for God's sakes. DeBrincat and Chikrin.
Guess you're not planning on having Pierre on your podcast.
Dorian? I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. He's in the press box all the time. I have nothing against the guy.
You should ask him.
I should. Yeah. I should just ask him about the pick. What happened on that call with Vegas? Lost. I will say, to Pierre's defense, he nailed the Tkachuk and Sanderson pick. And if you ever watch the video the NHL released of how trade calls go in, I don't think it's all on Pierre Dorian that there's lost in translation on that of getting Dadonov no trade list. Definitely some issues within the NHL that need to be resolved, because that was like not the right type of setup where it's just one guy by himself tallying it down. Like what's the system? Anyways, but that'd be an interesting story one day. So, Julian, just before I let you go, just anything with the book, any kind of stuff that you can plug before I let you go?
You can pre-order Black Aces wherever you get books. You can get them off the Triumph Books website. Triumph is the publisher I'm working with for the book, but also Amazon, Indigo, wherever you get books, local bookstores. And subscribe to the Chris Johnston podcast, the Chris Johnston Show, which is a podcast, I should say.
There you go.
I know we're not on the Sick Podcast Network, but
that's good.
Show the love to other podcasters out there. You're allowed to do that.
Does Chris Johnson know things about the league? I think, right?
Yes, he does. Yes,
I think he knows a lot, and I think he breaks a lot of things too.
Yes, he does.
Well, Julian, thanks so much for coming on and doing this. Everyone get Black Aces. I know I got mine, and I can't wait to read it. So go get it before I don't know. You're the better one at selling this thing, but I'm excited to read it, and cool that you have a foreword by Jerome McGinley. So that always hits different.
Thank you, Jerome.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone, and we'll be back soon enough.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Sens Spotlight on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.